Guys, good morning. Welcome to this performance analysis webinar. Thank you for joining us this morning for the first of our little series directed specifically for you guys as university students. Hope you're all well, hopefully everything's okay with you given the current situation, and looking forward today to providing you with a bit of insight and knowledge into the world of PA, a little bit more depth, and hopefully helping you guys a little bit in regards to employability, networking and job application tips. We know things have changed massively for you guys, as with everyone else at the moment, in your way of learning. So we really wanted to step in and help and do what we could to keep you guys engaged with your studies and your routes to getting job applications at the moment. So together, us at the University of Derby, University of Worcester and Hudl, we've all collaborated together to bring you guys a couple of online webinars on different topics. So the first of those is obviously today, and we're going to give you an insight into job applications, making yourself more employable with the experts that we've got on the panel with us. So this is what we're planning to do today. We'll do some quick introductions in just a second, both to myself and the expert panel members we've got joining us. We'll then go and look at some of the set questions that you guys sent through from the initial sign-up form. So thank you very much for those of you who did complete that sign-up form. We're going to go through 8 of your questions straight away. And then after that, we'll go into an open Q&A where those of you on the call right now will be able to post some live questions, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. In terms of brief introductions, some of you on the call may know me, others may not. I'll spare you the life history, but just so you've got a little bit of a background on me and my position. I finished my undergrad degree in 2012 down in Hertfordshire. Did a generic sport degree, didn't really know what I wanted to do at that time. Stumbled on this thing called performance analysis pretty much by accident, but discovered it, really enjoyed it. And then I threw myself into it. So went and did a wide variety of placements and internships, a whole host of different places, which was really good. Certainly helped me network. I'm sure that's something we'll talk about today. And some of those initial experiences and contacts led me to paid roles later in my career. Finished my undergrad and I was lucky enough to move straight onto a funded PhD. So I worked with the England netball team, where I was the senior performance analyst for those guys, but also concurrently completed my PhD studies. So lucky enough to travel with those guys, be their analysts for about 4 years, 4.5 years, and also get the research aspect as well, some of which I'm publishing at the moment. My specific area of research is around performance profiling and multimedia in particular. Currently, so since 2015, I've worked as a senior lecturer in PA at the University of Derby. So I head up all of our undergrad and postgrad provision in performance analysis at the university, and I link in really closely with elite organisations to get people applied experience, interns, placements, and things like that. I'm also still working actively as an analyst as well. So I'm a consultant performance analyst for the Badminton World Federation, BWF, and I've also been leading up the performance analysis provision at Loughborough Lightning Netball for the past 4.5 years. And within that role, I have an active role in recruiting students, training them and mentoring them to become better analysts. In terms of who we've got with us today, we've got a whole variety of people joining us with really good experience. So firstly, we've got Scott joining us, who right now for Hudl looks after the EFL teams. Previously, Scott was the lead performance analyst at the renowned and successful Swansea City Football Club performance analysis department. So really great experience in elite football. We've then got Roy. Right now, Roy's one of the product consultant managers for Hudl, and is one of the world's best sports code users, one of the most experienced with that particular product. Previous applied experience, so extensive experience within field hockey in the Netherlands and China, just to name 2. Then we've got Austin. So Austin is currently working as a senior solutions consultant for Hudl. Prior to that, Austin has worked extensively within football, So he's really well renowned within that, and having worked at the Football Association for a number of years, has got vast experience in working in elite football. And then we've got Lance. So Lance is one of the product consultants at Hudl, highly experienced performance analyst. He's got a really good track record of working in high-end performance analysis, especially around recruiting and training students like yourselves to come into applied roles and work, in particular, in Lance's case, for rugby league. So this is a theme we're going to look at today. This is the question that I, as a performance analysis lecturer, get all of the time. How do I get a job? How do I make myself more employable to get a job in what we know is a really competitive field of performance analysis? So when we put our initial sign-up form out a couple of weeks ago, this was the question that got posed more often than any other in that form. So we decided to focus the first of these webinars around this and to give you guys some hints and tips around employability, networking, and job applications themselves. So today's a really cool opportunity for you guys to learn from our experts who I just introduced. They'll provide some hints and tips on you becoming more employable and as well standing out on job applications and making yourself more employable. So how we're going to work it is, to start with, we'll go through some of the set questions that you guys gave us previously. So we're going to look at things like internships, placement years, additional qualifications, soft skills. We'll then move on to look at the application process itself, what you could expect from an interview if you get an interview. And then really relevant and current is how you can respond when we get some normality back to the current pandemic, and how you can respond to that, how things might have changed slightly based on what's going on in the world right now. Bit of housekeeping. So if you've got a question, then down here you'll see we've got the Q&A function down here. If you click on that and then enter in your question, that will pop through to us. Once we've done the first set questions, at the end we'll then take any of your questions, if we've got time, through that Q&A function. So please do type anything in as we go through, and time allowing, we'll try and get through as many as we can after we've been through the first few questions. We're aiming to be on for around about an hour in total, so we'll have until around about 11:30. We'll go through the first questions, and then we'll take your live questions after that. Okay, so we'll crack straight on. So first question that we've had posed of particular interest is, what types of internships should I be undertaking while I am at university? What are the kind of things I should be looking to do? So Austin, do you want to start us off on that one?
Hi everyone. So something that I've only learned probably in the last sort of couple of years, and it's something that's really shouted out to me that it resonated with what I should have done probably back in my university days, is actually done more multi-sports internships. So I've been lucky to work in rugby, I've been lucky to work in football, and they work both team sports, but do things very differently. But my process across both of them gave me my foundation to have an impact. So I would have a look at multi-sports internships. Don't just stick to one, and learn from different processes across the board of different sports. So it really helps you out when you do get into your fixed sport and employment, to learn from a different variety of people. So that would be my number one advice.
Who else wants to jump in there? Scott, maybe from a football perspective, people often want to do interns within elite football. So what's your advice around it?
Yeah, so I'm similar to Austin in terms of the multi-sports to begin with. My previous experience, obviously, went to Cardiff, went to UWIC, now known as Cardiff Met, and studied sport and physical education. Not really knowing what I wanted to do when I was there, similar to yourself, maybe Andrew, in that sense. But then when things came about in terms of the PA and learning about performance analysis, I then stumbled across, obviously, Glamorgan Cricket Club, and at the time they needed some support there, and they were providing an internship, so I jumped into the cricket side. And also then, alongside Cardiff Met, they were working alongside a programme with the WRU, so I chipped in there to gain some more valuable experience there. But yeah, firstly, my first point of call would be with the university you're currently in, what relationships they have with what clubs. And I know there's many who have very strong links with football and rugby clubs. So yeah, that would be my first point of contact, really.
There's a bit of a multi-sport theme. So if someone's really keen on working in, say, football, rugby, whatever it might be, is not necessarily just doing that to start with and getting a variety of different experiences to begin with.
Yeah, I think for me, it's dedicating your process. So the most important thing is understanding the different processes that take, different workflows and different efficiencies that you want to do, and that comes from a variety of experiences. If you just go down one channel, you're going to be very blindsided in the way you think. You've got to open your mind to think in a different way to help with your workflows. Would be a bit of advice to give.
Perfect. Roy, Lance, anything to add on that one?
Well, what I personally found interesting is working at organizations where you can make an impact. Now we're talking about an internship only to start with, but what I see around Europe when visiting all the clubs in Europe and helping them with their analysis workflows and sports code is that the best analysts so far are the ones that are a one-man band, are working with limited budget and need to be very creative. So if you can find a place for yourself where you can actually make a bigger impact, and not just one of the 100 analysts at the organization, that could actually bring you to the next level. So I would definitely start working somewhere where someone can guide you. But then for me, the next step would be to start finding organizations where you can actually make an impact. And multi-sport is definitely something that I put a lot of emphasis on as well. So I want to back up that one. So you can learn from one and another and incorporate new ideas. Because sports on its own or clubs on their own, they will never come up with new ideas, but only if you get them from like other areas, other experience as well. So that would be my advice in this case.
Okay, right, we'll move on to our second one. So a common question, again, at the moment, and these are becoming more and more popular, is the opportunity for undergrad students to take a year out. So typically finish 2 years of study, so finish level 4 and 5 as we would call them, and then take a year out, go and work for a year full-time within an organisation as a PA, and then come back to finish your studies, your final year after that. So maybe if I could go to Lance firstly on that one, what are your thoughts around the pros and cons around whether people should or shouldn't take that year out and go and work in industry full-time?
I think just have a goal in mind when you're actually going to set out to do your industrial placement. So have some aims for that particular year and try not to get derailed from those, because it's quite easy to just see what could be considered as being taking an industrial placement, say like a glamour club, like a Premier League football club, for example, and kind of get lost in the system somewhere, and you come out of that year and then you have a load of sort of like questions in your head still about, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. So, and echoing what Roy was saying, you know, pick a sport or pick a coach specifically that you're actually going to learn something off. Maybe someone who's got a track record of developing his staff, rather than somebody who's not going to pay any attention to what you're doing. So you're actually looking to build some skills while you're on this industrial placement. It's I know university students love going in and grabbing free stash and things like that when you go into a club, like most analysts, but you actually go in there, just build your skill set, and research who you're actually going to be working with as well, because that can be massively important. It could be something that really accelerates your career, or it can be something that puts you a year behind everybody else. So everybody else finishing their, you know, going through the full 3 years of their course and then going straight out into industry, whereas you're taking a calculated risk here and taking a year out. So you've got to make it pay for yourself whilst you're doing that.
From your guys' experience, anyone feel free to jump in on this. From your experience, whether you might have had placement students before, how often do people actually get then kept on? I think that's a question that students certainly ask me quite a lot. So if they do this, they do that full year in industry, they're obviously then really conscious to try and stay on in a practical role. What are your experiences about clubs, organisations actually keeping people on after that initial placement year?
I can jump in on this one. Just from my experience at Swansea, we had quite a skeleton staff in terms of PA. So the interns that came through the system at Swansea, we eventually, for the majority of them, we took on as full-time employees. And we built up our department as we went. But like back to Lance and what Lance and Roy said there in terms of picking the right organisations, just to be aware, you don't want to maybe fall into an organisation where you're just another body, if you like. Whereas maybe if you pick an organisation where you can be that maybe one-man band alongside someone who you can take experience from with a background in analysis. But I suppose each organisation is different.
I'd like to add something to that as well. What I learned from the larger organizations so far is that they will always make room for exceptional talent, regardless of how their financial state is. I found a very interesting comment from a couple of larger football clubs in Europe. So it gives me a lot of hope for those that have a lot of talent as well. That they assured me that there's always a place for talent, because they really keep an eye out for that, because they do want to have that competitive advantage. So they won't want to lose that talent to another club in a way.
So really, if you go in there, you do a really good job, you're doing exceptional stuff, you're innovating, then actually you're giving yourself that opportunity potentially to be kept on. Good. Okay, great stuff. Anything anyone else wants to add on that placement year one?
Yeah, I was going to say, just to add on to it, always remember that you're going in there to support. There's a reason why they call them support staff. So you're going in there to actually support the people that are in there. So if you go in with that mindset, rather than thinking about the outcome as like you wanting to get a job and get kept on at the end of it, just do the best possible job you can to support the people that are there. Then hopefully it should pan out like Roy says, whereby you would, hopefully get kept on at the end of it, because people will see that as a really good personality trait about yourself.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we know experience is really important. We know people need that applied experience in order to get the full-time job. So whilst these students are at university, what is the best way in which to actually approach these organisations? Is it cold call? Is it through university? Is it email? Or what are the kind of hints and tips, I suppose, on this one? Austin, do you want to lead us off on this?
Yeah, so just one of the key competencies of being an analyst is building relationships. So it's kind of something that's stuck in my mind, especially when I've now moved to Hudl, about gaining experience in different environments. And the best way to do it is build that relationship with different people. And if that's recommendations from people that you have, from lecturers, from people in the industry, it's getting those soft introductions, and then hopefully that will then lead to something else. And then you're building that community of people that you've got as a contact. So, once you've built that community then spreads, and then it spreads, and then it spreads over your career. And then once you've finished your career, you'll have this full net of connections that you have. And then some of them might lead to opportunities and gaining experiences in different places or environments. So again, start that building that community now would be my kind of advice in building this experience. And then it'll lead to different paths. You don't know what path you're ever going to go on, because different paths take you different places. If someone said to me that I'd be working in a Hudl now, I probably said no, I probably wouldn't. I would have been on a different journey. But these paths from different relationships that you build go on this journey. So again, build your path or your journey, and people will help you along the way, would be my experience into this. Because the amount of connections that people have to different people leads you to the next thing, okay? So build that relationships with people, and then people will trust you. And then once you've got the trust, it will then open doors for different environments, would be my advice.
That's really important. One of the best things someone ever told me when I was a student, when I was trying to get applied roles, was always leave yourself in a good place, because PA is a relatively small world, and word gets around very quickly about whether you're good or not good at what you do, whether you're efficient, whether you're professional, etc., things like that. So building those relationships, as Austin said, it is massive. And again, someone once said to me, never leave anywhere on bad terms, because word will get around quite quickly, and you need to ensure that you're keeping your professionalism and the good job that you do in a really positive light. So building those relationships and networking is massively important. Anyone else want to jump in on this one in terms of how these guys can approach organisations and get this experience?
Yeah, I would not limit myself to UK only. because the funny thing is about the UK, if you look at universities and performance analysis degrees, you're way ahead of almost any other country in Europe, which means there is a big need for analysts in other countries as well, but they're not professional programs. So finding educated people that need to gain experience, it actually helps for the demand that clubs actually have. If I look at like countries that speak English really well, unless you speak another language, I mean, that helps a lot, you know. If you speak another language really well, try to find a place in that country, but don't limit yourself to UK only, because there are a lot of you out there searching for the same place. So I would also look for countries that speak English really well. They're in need of talent, but they don't have a full backroom staff yet, but definitely internships are available. Looking at Scandinavian countries, for example, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, you know, big football countries, but like smaller clubs. So you may have the opportunity to act as a one-man band and gain that experience, and still on a high level. So I was very fortunate to work also in those countries the last couple of years, and you see that opportunity as well. The English is absolutely perfect, so no concerns on that one. But yeah, there are positions.
So a couple of the questions on the sign up form were around, like, if I want to go and work maybe in Australia, New Zealand, somewhere like that, what would your guys' advice be in terms of that? How do people go about doing that if they want to move further afield? Like you said, Roy, how would they go about actually doing that and starting to make those links and build relationships?
Well, I think, I mean, I've worked in both. I've worked Australia, New Zealand, France. And the way I got into it initially is a little bit similar to what some of the guys have been saying. I looked at what teams were coming over here. So I looked at touring teams. So you study the international calendars of different sports coming over, and coaches talk to coaches, doesn't matter what sport they're from. So if, let's say a field hockey team was coming, or a netball team was coming across from Australia or New Zealand to play over here, chances are they're not going to bring a performance analyst with them. If it's if they're a smaller organization, shall we say. So reaching out to those people and offering to help whilst they're in country and supporting the tour. And again, you'll be doing it often for no money or anything like that, but you do the best possible job you can, follow the principles that Austin said, make sure that you make a good impression on them people. They then go back to their country. So when you get to a stage where maybe you want to take that year industrial placement and you're looking for someone to read, you've got a contact then in the country. So you've got somebody who could potentially open the door for you. And they might say to you, look, there's nothing in field hockey, say in New Zealand, but I know a couple of coaches in these other sports if you're interested in that. And then, you work your way in that way rather than going to the expense of, I suppose, flying out to Australia or New Zealand and looking for a position. You can build your contacts here in this country, which keeps your costs down. And then hopefully you can then expand, obviously, and get yourself overseas. And it's a great, working in a different culture as well as a different sport is unbelievably good life experience. And you'll be surprised what you'll actually take out of it.
One bit of advice. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the good questions here Thomas has is how do we become aware of placements? And it sounds weird, but there's not such a thing as like an internship job board for performance analysis that I'm aware of. But that's what makes it so hard. So I see the struggle here, and therefore the comment of Austin about the network and the relationship is very, very key. So you need to ask others as well. Ask us, for example. To see how it can bring people in contact with other organizations, because it's really hard to find. If you want to just reach out to a club, I mean, you can send them an email, but you never know where that email ends up. But I've seen it working in the past. But yeah, I just want to back up Austin's story with that, because that job board is not there yet.
So one thing I will add to people who might have a bit of a growth mindset and might be thinking around data science or any other expertise in specific areas. So life example, last week, I was listening to a webinar by Lloyds Bank, and I was speaking, and they had a data scientist speaking. And so I just reached out to them after that webinar, and especially in this isolation period of time, and actually learning from what they've done in an organization. is exactly what we're trying to do in sport. So like little things like that, and open your minds to other things and how you can apply different methods in different organizations, which could open up a door in a different way if you are data minded. So, you know, open that growth mindset and kind of really explore avenues that you could potentially go and visit in the future.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next one. So aside from potentially a university degree, either in a PA specifically, obviously there's a few PA specific undergrads now, or maybe just a more generic sport and exercise science degree, what other qualifications are going to make students more employable? So maybe coaching qualifications, the Hudl Academy stuff. What kind of extra things do these guys need to be getting?
To me personally, I always found it very valuable if you're a rock star in all the operational and technical aspects. And I mean, you need to start all the way from the ground up, right? So you won't touch a lot of like theoretical basis things. Performance analysis on the practical daily basis also comes down to practical operational skills. So looking at skill sets, I would definitely check out getting more experience in equipment, for example, how to operate and work with equipment, how to learn to troubleshoot. Performance analysis is a lot of improvisation as well on game days. I think if I look at the couple of years I worked together with my field hockey team for almost 10 years, the amount of games that everything went absolutely smooth like butter, like absolutely perfect, I think maybe 10, 12 games only in those 10 years. There was always something going wrong. So if I look at the qualifications, I think like operational skills for me are absolutely key, because if you're ready to improvise, it means you're owning skills, and that is really key at some point to save you time when you do your analysis, or to come up with new ideas how to do things better, before applying all kinds of like theoretical bases or approaches to analysis or the contents of analysis as well. So I put a lot of emphasis on other things that have nothing to do with the contents of analysis, but more with all the things that are around that.
So very much around like the technical skills and being proficient with the hardware, the software, especially to be really hot on those.
Yeah.
Great. Scott, you've had people work for you. You've put job descriptions out to try and employ people. What else do you look for apart from a degree and maybe some experience actually doing it?
Yeah, so I think back to what you mentioned there, coaching qualifications can always help. Something that I've undertaken myself in terms of my football badges, all the way to the A license level now. So that can always help with the language of when speaking with these coaches within these organisations. It can always help. But then adding to that, then I think other skills which stand out on CVs. So for me now, one would be the likes of Tableau and data visualization courses, which are currently available with the increase of data and the increase of technology in these organizations now, that they're crying out for a Tableau user, for example. So those types of things, and alongside then the Hudl Academy accreditations that happen in ISPAS as well. Those types of things I'd always kind of look out for to see if they have those.
I think I was going to say a couple of questions that have come in regarding sports science as well. People having a broader skill set, so coming at it from a different angle. As a performance analyst, you're going to be working in a multidisciplinary team. So having an understanding of what the demands are of the other disciplines is often a really good thing, because you can get caught up in your own work and thinking you're the most important person in that setup, you know, whereas you're a part of it, you're a cog in that machine. So having a good background, like say in sports science or in, you know, anything to do with computers with regards to programming. So learning programming language is good. Learning additional languages, like Roy was saying, if you're going to looking at going into football, for example, you're going to be surrounded by people who speak multiple languages. So if you can pick that up as a skill, then that'd be fantastic as well. And finally, one of the questions was, would you be more employable within a football club with an undergraduate master's degree or a sports science type degree? we'll have a look at what the trends are at the minute within sport and in sports science teams with regards performance analysis, with regards data scientists, and just see what really you're passionate about and what really interests you, because that'll sustain you, especially when when it gets a little bit tough and a bit stressful. If you're really passionate about it, you'll push through those periods. But definitely, keep it as broad as you can, your qualifications, and never stop trying to add another qualification on there. And by qualification, it doesn't have to be a paper qualification. Just get out there and just learn things. There's a mountain of information on, my son says that you can learn anything you want off of YouTube, and I fully believe him that is the case. So just get on there and just get an interest and have a base understanding, so that you actually, when you're in meetings, you understand what people are talking about within that meeting. You don't have to know it to PhD level, but you do need to have a base understanding of it.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Okay, this is a common one again, soft skills. So people talk about outside of developing your technical skills and your degree and things, is developing my soft skills. So I guess first question to you guys, really just to, I suppose, clear it up, is what are these soft skills that we talk about so often in the industry? And then second part of the question is, how can I actually develop those in practice? I don't know who wants to jump in first on this one.
I'll take this one. This one is, especially if you're thinking, so when I worked at the FA, one of our big things when we look at interviewing the next analyst that's going to come into the FA, we actually thought the soft skills were the most important part. The actual process side of it, we weren't hugely ingrained in, because we had the ability to educate, and that was the journey that we're going to be on. But if you didn't have the soft skills, it was going to be really hard to educate them really quickly and make an impact as soon as you walked in the door after being employed. So things can be like problem solving was the biggest one. Problem solving under pressure. As analysts, you're going to be under pressure most of your time. So in a live environments, in training situations, you might only have 2 minutes to actually answer a question for a sports director or your head coach. So you've got to be able to problem solve under those pressured situations. The next one has been able to adapt to different coaching styles. Every coach works in a different way. So having those skills to be able to adapt and change your methods to what you need to adapt. Hence the multi-sport, you'll get to learn those adaptability skills. And then again, it gets down to work ethic. So one of my things that I pride myself on is having that work ethic, is getting that job done, but also understanding that you have your downtime. You're not working 24/7 and getting, completely taken out. You've got to understand that you work hard, and then you have your ability to downtime to actually work hard again. So like that, those are one of the things that those are the soft skills I kind of look for as an analyst if I was going to employ somebody. And those skills come across the whole board. Like this could be business, this could be sport, this could be across the board. So those sort of soft skills, and building relationships would be the last one for me, is actually having that connection and building those relationships. Once you've got a relationship with a coach, with a member of staff, a sports director, it really helps you push your vision of what you think performance analysis is and the direction you want to go with budgets and things like that in the future. So that would be and that's what we did in our interview process, just to give them an experience. We use those soft skills, and we actually tried to test them rather than the actual process that you thought that everyone would look for. So we didn't mind what the outcome was of your work. We're actually more looking at the soft skills and how you got to that end piece. So it's a different way of thinking about it. So that's how we did it as a live example.
That's really interesting. It's almost the opposite to maybe what people think, is that actually, if you've got these soft skills, if you can communicate, if you've got the work ethic, etc., that to some people is as important, if not more important, than those actual practical analysis skills. Because like you say, Austin, those can be taught. Organizations have got people who can actually teach you those. So that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
The American Navy SEALs, they have this model between trust and performance. And the Navy SEALs, they always assess someone on how trustworthy is he and what are his performance skills. And the person that is like outperforming, that outshines everyone, if he's not trustworthy, they don't want to have him in the team. Someone that is really trustworthy but really poor in performance, you also don't want him in the team. And what was very clear from the Navy SEALs is that one of the key points in that metric for them is someone that is really trustworthy, maybe not the best one, but trustworthy is the most important metric if you compare the two. So you should be really good at what you do in terms of performance, but you don't have to be the very, very best. But trust is really key. So if you're looking at soft skills, being able to communicate, deliver, be on time with what you do, deliver what you promise, all of that is so key for clubs. I've seen it a lot where people got sacked because they started to become cocky. They thought they were stepping on like the head coach area, and I thought they could make decisions on how the team should perform. But your support staff as well, so you're helping the entire coaching staff and the team to perform. So trust for me, when I saw that little presentation on the Navy SEALs, then it really hit me about the trust part when working with teams.
Okay. Anyone anything else to add on that one before we move on?
Yeah, just to probably back up to what Roy said there regarding that trust and having that those communication skills. I think especially within performance analysis now, it's no longer an isolated department. It's very much performance analysis now stems across the board into sports science, into the coaching staff, into the medical team. So you really need to make sure that those communication skills are right, and you have that trust within not just your department, but everyone else, and work together as a team.
Brilliant. Okay. Okay, so big one then again. What are employers really looking for when they're hiring new performance analysts? So jobs, interns go out on a fairly regular basis. I think there was one from Man City went out just yesterday. I think there was an under 15s role has just literally gone out. So what are people like Man City going to be looking for when they're hiring new performance analysts? And second part to this one then is, how can I make my CV stand out? A club might get 100, 200 or more applications for one role. What really makes people stand out? What do you guys look for when you're hiring people?
I think similar to probably what we've already touched on in terms of different experiences. So something that I used to look out for is people who've had different experiences in different sports, or also maybe worked abroad, because again, if you've worked abroad, that brings a different level of having to work in that different culture and different environment, but also a different skill set as well. So like I mentioned regarding the qualifications, whether that's any qualifications within Tableau or data visualization courses, and something that they can offer different to what they currently have at the organization. So I think putting yourself out there and kind of looking at these new skills that are coming up within the performance analysis space, I think would best set you there in terms of stand out.
Just for me on your CV part of it, because I think we touched quite a lot on the top question, is I've always believed that if you've got a goal or a mission in what you want to achieve, it's really good to put that on there. Is actually what your values are and what your mission and what you think you're trying to achieve. And it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, and really put yourself out there and say, this is what I want to achieve, and this is the journey that I've been on to try and achieve those things. Because that's what you're trying to do, is set, this is what I'm about, this is what I've done to achieve what I'm about, and this is what I'll bring to an organization. So like, if you have that mindset, for me as a CV, it really brings to life how you do that, and use different wording like that. So this is what I'm about. This is, how I've gone on my journey, and this is what I believe that I'm going to achieve through these stances. Like, because CVs become very structured, very rigid, and it very much like you get bored after reading the five sentences. If I'm being completely honest, I normally skip down to what skills they've got, who they've worked for. But if someone actually showed a journey and actually a development plan kind of thing of what they've been on, it makes it so much more powerful. So the ideas like that would be a good starting place, and actually make you think about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, and gives you kind of like the goals that Lance talked about of what you're actually trying to achieve in your career. So it's something that I've done in the role coming to Hudl and things like that. Just think about what I want to achieve and actually how I'm going to get there to prove what you're worth.
Just to jump in there as well on that, I don't think there's anything wrong with not knowing where you want to take things and not knowing where that journey might lead you. So just to be able to put down that on the CV as well, in terms of, this is where I'm at now in my career, and these are the types of avenues I may want to take. Similar to myself, I didn't know whether I wanted to go down the coaching route, whether I wanted to go down the performance analysis route. So very much being open and honest when having this, putting these down on your CV, I think can be a benefit there.
I I wasn't going to jump in, but I've got one that I've always found very useful here when we're taking people straight out of university or degrees. While we're in this very media-centric world, it's very easy to absorb a lot of content on a daily basis. So what I look for is, if we're looking for somebody straight out of education, is maybe through LinkedIn is an exceptional way to do it. Whereas if you're absorbing, 5 to 10 pieces of content a week at the very, very start, but after a couple of months, you start to respond to that content and open up a wider discussion. It might be that you have a particular interest in data. It might be have a particular interest in live performance analysis. But then once you read the articles and you start responding to them, and you start responding to them with your specialist area of focus, your name becomes more well known within the industry, even if you're not employed. So you might think, I can't do this because I haven't got a job. No, you can still do all the reading you want whilst you're all at home. I mean, there's so much information out there, it's unbelievable. And then when you come to apply for a job, you'll have seen them people posting on LinkedIn and putting interesting concepts that they've come up with below. And so their name isn't new to you then. Their CV is new, but their name isn't. And so you can actually make yourself more well-known without actually having a professional background while still being at university, would be my one.
I think with the CV itself as well, a lot of people will take templates and then they'll fill information in on a template. And I think it's important to remember what it is you're applying for. So if you're applying for that position at Manchester City, for example, as a performance analyst, you're going to be presenting information. And I mean, I would look at the CV in that case as something that if that information about yourself was a review of a performance, would you be happy to give that to the coach? And do you think they would get the information quickly off of that? So, just following some simple principles that you would normally have when you're actually putting together a performance report. So having the important information very, very clear, so it stands out, like Austin was saying, having some pointers on there for, there's nothing wrong to say how you would do things differently. So moving forward, I would, and then you give a statement as, because you're going to be doing that in your day-to-day life as a performance analyst anyway. So always tailor it to what it is that you're looking for. And I don't see anything wrong with people putting out there. You've seen like video CVs that some people put out there, because maybe you're not as good as putting things down on paper, but you're exceptionally good at putting yourself across and putting the message across on an actual video. So, and it also gets you a chance to showcase your video skills as well. So having a combination of maybe a little bit of you talking to camera and a little bit of obviously, the more sort of like keynote slide template where you can talk over the top of it, just something different, because like Austin said, you're going to flip through these CVs and you're going to have maybe 45 seconds that you're going to just quickly skim through them. And then all of a sudden you come across something that's different, and it'll just grab your attention, and you'll be just drawn into it to actually want to investigate it a little bit more. And that's your foot in the door moment. So you've got to take a little bit of time. Don't just throw together a generic template that you would use for, say, like 4, 5, 6 different jobs. Tailor it and target it at what you're actually applying for.
So actually using some of those PA skills, like you said, can a coach see that information really quickly? Kind of the same principles are applying on your CV. Do you get your key points over really succinctly and quickly, so that you do stand out? And that's really, really interesting, Lance. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So you've got an interview. I'm going to come back to you on this one, Lance. I think you've got really good experience on this. So when someone gets an interview, what kind of processes can they expect, and what kind of things should they be preparing?
I think you need to obviously research the organisation you're going to, research the people who are there, maybe look at their journey, where they've been on, have a look at what their skill sets are. So is there any gaps there? So a little bit like if you were trying to put together a sort of like a master's proposal or a PhD proposal, you're looking for gaps that might not be there. So what skills are you bringing to the table that they don't already have, and highlight those, make sure that those are a central point of what you're interviewing is. Have a look at what, some simple things like the dress code. People will turn up wearing a suit, but if it's more of a tech type company, there might be more of a dress down policy. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out to employees that are already there, asking them questions about it. And just, try and prepare yourself for those awkward questions, because there'll always be some standard questions in there about, problem solving. How would you solve this problem? Or tell me about a problem you've overcome in the past. How do you deal with it? What would you do differently? And be incredibly honest with yourself on that. So if you don't know the information, just say, I didn't know, but I went away and I actually researched it. This is how I researched it. And I came up with an answer, and then I solved it. So it took a little bit longer, but I managed to solve it. So, but don't be worried. Interviews in sports settings are completely different. I've always found from interviews outside, so like in academia, they're very relaxed, less formal, and you can be yourself very quickly. They're designed to actually let you relax into into that situation and actually show the best sides of yourself.
I think as well, in the world we're going now in the modern day, it's more task orientated in the interview process. So you probably it won't be a sit down, I'm going to present to you and that's my job done. It's going to be more like 3 or 4 tasks, and they're going to try and get you to look at different skill sets within those tasks and meet different people. And the goal for us at different organizations I work with is actually putting people under pressure. Like if you put them in a real pressure situation, you actually find out what they're actually like. And it might not, like I said, it's not the outcome what we're looking to get, which everyone focuses on the outcome. We're actually looking into how you get to that point and actually how you deal with that point. So again, don't always focus on you have to have this shiny toy at the end of the interview. It's the processes that you do and the skills that you do to get to that point. Again, because you might only have 20 minutes to do something that actually takes 2 hours, 3 hours. But they're just testing you to how much you can get done or how much you can actually process the information. So again, don't think always about the outcome. Think about, why you've done it and how you're trying to get there would be a bit of advice.
Okay, brilliant. Well, just conscious of time, guys, so we'll move on to the next one because there's a few live questions come through as well. So we'll do the next couple of set questions, and then I'll post some of these ones in the Q&A to you. So finishing up on this last one then, current situation, obviously very, very different for all of us right now. And it's potentially going to have huge impacts on sport clubs' budgets, their ability to get new staff in and things like that. So what would your really current and relevant advice right now be around seeking recruitment in sport post the current pandemic?
I'm happy to take this one. I think it's the world that we're in at this moment in time is very remote. And it's probably going to be that for a period of time. Again, obviously sport not taking shape, and what organizations are going to need are going to need the power of what universities offer and finding the next generation of analysts to support what they're trying to do. So being able to, highlight some of the work that you potentially do at universities, if you're a lecturer listening to this, and actually show how you can connect and help build the next crop of a community of analysts to support organizations that might be struggling. And how we can help them do research projects. How can we help them answer performance questions? And things like that I think is really going to benefit organizations in this next kind of year until they get back to the place that we are. And hopefully that will lead then to employment. If you're doing a bit of research for them and it's doing really well, it might then lead to that whole, I want to then get you into the placement year. And then once that year's done, it then leads to a full employment. So again, things like that, I think that we need to be thinking about, either if you're a senior lecturer, if you're a professor, and actually get your students to do some work for an organization to prove how good they are at doing what they do, to then lead to employment, because you're not probably going to get so much visibility of hands-on stuff for the next 6 months to potentially to a year. So that would be my kind of direction I would go.
Anyone, anything else to add on that one?
I'm happy to chuck something in as well. I think also, the goal of, I would say, the majority of people on this call is to actually work in sport. But when it's your first position coming out of university and you're going into let's say a finance company, and you're going to do very heavy data analytics, that's a very big transferable skill for when you want to come back to sport. So, there are still companies, sports clubs, but the industry, in terms of business as a whole, is still hiring to a degree. So the end goal might be, I want to be this. But also, you know, you can widen your net and have a look at what else could give you additional skills. So when sport starts live again. So, you know, have you half your time looking at jobs that are really specific to what you want to do, but have the other half of your time looking at jobs that could be really interesting to a sports employer in 6 months' time. And I think that would be quite impressive if a candidate did that, said, you know, they came, let's say they applied for a job here at Hudl, or if we were a club, and they said, look, it was pretty weird trying to find a job at this time, but I went and did this and learned all these different things, which can help me with you now. So just widen it out a little bit, I think is important at this time.
Okay, perfect, guys. Thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll move through to some of the questions that are coming in. There's quite a few come through, so we'll try and do these relatively quick fire, as there's a good number already come through. If anyone's got any others that you want answering, now's the time to use that Q&A function, and we'll try and get through them right now. So I think we sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to make it a bit more explicit, Jess has asked, what advice would you give to students that don't do a specific PA degree? So someone who's maybe on a sport and exercise science degree, but they still want to get a career in performance analysis. What can someone like Jess do to still get really, you know, good experience in PA and forge that career in the industry?
For me, I think there's some transferable skills in that sports and exercise science. Like, you know, you're going to be doing research, you're going to be doing analysis of some type. So you're doing those transferable skills. It might just be in a different environment. So again, when I did my master's, I did a lot of biomechanics. So it could be that you take that skill and you transfer it to a sport and show how you gain experience in that way. And just again, it's gaining your experience. The more experience you get in multiple different environments, the more you'll be employable. And it just shows that you're willing to learn different things and have that growth mindset. Is a key one now in this industry, in this modern world. So that would be my advice: just go on that journey, but have an analysis kind of headspace in your mind when you're doing your work in sports and exercise science, and then that will transfer to performance analysis.
I think just very quickly from me on that one, this was me. I didn't do a PA degree, I did a generic sport degree, but as soon as I found out it was PA that I wanted to forge a career in, I tried to mould my modules around that. So I had coaching modules, biomechanics modules, which I really tried to apply to an analysis perspective, and then did my research proposal and my actual research project itself within PA. So there's definitely ways you can get some PA into it, even if it's not in the title of your degree. So we'll go to Matt's question next. I'm trying to diversify my PA experience by branching out into other sports like volleyball and cricket, which are very new to me. I don't have a lot of experience in them. What are your experiences when branching out into new sports, and how do you get to grips with applying PA in a new sport that you've maybe not worked in before?
So I'm happy to jump in on this one. So I think, again, a lot of the performance analysis tools you learn in university can be transferable into many sports. So firstly, gaining an understanding, a basic level of understanding of the rules in cricket and volleyball would be where I'd pitch that, but also then being quite creative in terms of looking into what can be done from an analysis point of view in those types of sports. Again, speaking to people, reaching out to people on LinkedIn who maybe come from that cricket background. A lot of people will be happy to have those conversations with you to give you some insights in terms of what can be done and what is being done in the sport. So yeah, being quite adaptable there with what you look at.
I'll give a real life example. So I worked for England Rugby for 10 years and spent a lot of time in a rugby mindset, and then had an opportunity to go to the English FA. I was not football minded at that time. So I was very much rugby based, but what I did is just take my process and took my skills that you learn, like building relationships, understanding environments, communication, and all of that, and applied it to football, and then grew my overtime in football with my knowledge, because your processes sets you aside to transfer to another sport. And luckily it was team sport to team sport, but it's the same process. You're analyzing the same thing. You're breaking down the questions in the same way. You're analysing the game, but you're doing it in more of a data-centric mindset, because football is more objective or subjective in that time. So just applying a bit of data to support what the coaches are maybe not are missing. And it just gave that insight. And once you've got that insight, you grow your knowledge of the game by working with coaches, working with people. So don't be scared to do that. Take your process with you, and that'll hold you in good stead. And if you're good at building relationships and good at communication and creating that insight, you'll go on that journey. Yeah, it's a long road to learn that sport because there's so many different nuances, but it's definitely possible to do. So don't shy away from doing it.
Perfect. We talked a little bit about data earlier. So questions coming from Callum. Currently works outside of sport within a retail environment as a data analyst, but uses Power BI, Tableau, SQL programs, etc. on a regular basis. What would your advice be for someone who's got a real data background who wants to break into the sport industry? Is there a place for someone like that, and how would they go about doing it?
100% there's a space for this, by the way. Like, this is the new modern way that everyone's thinking around data. There's so many data sources in the world, and actually how do you manage that data is a top question I hear every day from different sports teams around the world. So it's a skill set that not many people have, or people are trying to learn. And it'll be a skill set that will set you up, above other people in the world. The gem that people are missing in sports science, and this could be someone out there like that are starting their journey, is having that connection between the soft skills of building relationships and the data. So a lot of people historically in data science is really tough to have that relationship and actually provide insight that's going to be impactful for a coach. In a business, it will work because you're providing data. They'll understand the data and they'll interpret it themselves. But in sport, it's very hard to get a coach to actually interpret the data. So actually having that middle road person and being able to build that relationship and show the power of what the data offers is definitely key in the next 5, 10, 15 years in the sports industry. So yeah, 100%. And those skills are transferable. I actually look to companies that are doing it to try and employ people into sport now because they're more advanced in sport.
Brilliant. Thanks, Austin. Guys, there's loads of questions coming in, so we'll try and fire through maybe 3 or 4 more, just conscious of time. Any that we don't get round to answering right now, we will try and get an answer posted back out. We might follow up with another short Q&A video, but we'll crack through another couple now. So question related around actual applications and writing cover letters. So Rachel's asked, any tips on writing a personal statement or cover letter to get jobs? What are the things that those of you who've recruited an awful lot, what do you look for? What are you trying to read in those cover letters and personal statements?
Well, to kick off, I've read an awful lot of resumes and cover letters in the last couple of years. What I find very important is what you can bring to the organization. It is unbelievable how often I see letters of people that actually going to explain how much the organization brings to their lives, so that they can learn from it. Now, that sounds great from an internship point of view, but if you're talking about actual employment, then the organization needs to know what you can bring to the organization. So keep that in mind when you're writing your cover letter.
Okay, brilliant. There's a few questions coming on a similar theme here, and it's all around postgraduate. So a couple of people have asked, basically, is doing a postgrad degree in performance analysis worth it? What benefits do you feel that having a postgrad degree or undertaking a postgrad degree would bring?
I think your research skills, for one, like Austin was touching on before. If you're going to learn a new sport, you've got to go off and you've got to research it. So having a discipline to actually be able to research that, being able to summarize data, putting together reports. So if you're actually writing up your research for a journal article, for example, gives you a good sort of foundation in writing skills. And also it can never harm you, like doing a postgrad, whether it be a master's or whether it be a PhD, because as we're finding right now, it may be, and I'm sure there's a lot of analysts out there questioning right now whether or not they're going to stay in the industry or whether they'll move into a different industry. And having something like a postgrad qualification can give you some other opportunities. And it can also help with, again, with your networking, with the people that you meet on your courses. They'll take up positions in other organizations, other sports organizations, and you'll come across them. You'll be amazed at how often you pass across with people you meet at university and in the early days of your career. later on, you know, 10, 15 years down the track, you'll still come across these people. So I would say it would never harm you doing it, but you've got to weigh up the balance of it. Is it right now in your life? Is it something that is, you know, financially viable, and is it something that you feel is going to really help your career moving forward? Because it's not a stopgap; it's a real commitment to actually take it on.
I think from my perspective from a university side, a master's that you can get experience at the same time as is a really valuable one. So obviously right now, well, for the last couple of years, you've seen the growth of funded masters with clubs, where you can complete your masters alongside doing, you know, another year's experience at a club at the same time. Those are really valuable because not only are you getting more talk content, you're getting your research skills up, as Lance just mentioned, but also you're getting that practical experience again at the same time. So looking out for those kind of opportunities, it's normally this time of year that they start to come out. So those of you who are in your final year of your undergrad, if that's something you're thinking about, a master's they're definitely a really good option for getting both sides, improving your education further and also getting more experience at the same time. We'll do a couple more really quickly. Question here, can it be seen that experience outweighs qualifications?
It's a great debate. Different people have different minds and different thought processes on that. I've been a big believer that your experiences help you in understanding your process and your workflow efficiencies. I learned a lot on the job, so you will learn a lot when you're actually doing the work and looking at the time efficiencies that you have to make, that you probably wouldn't see it in a research and postgrad environment, because you've got a bit of time to look at investing in different technologies and different workflows and different data models and all of that stuff. But in the sport, you don't have that time. So it's like you learn both skill sets from both things. But as well, and experience is based off obviously in your talent as well as a person and what you offer, because people might have 1 year experience in data analysis or data management, SQL, and that's something that the organization needs and wants, and there's a gap. And I know someone's asked the question, what are the gaps in the market? That is a gap in the market currently, especially across multiple teams, across multiple leagues and multiple sports across the world. So that's just an experience that you might have from Lloyd that takes you above everyone else that's got a postgrad degree in performance analysis. So again, it's what you can offer as your talent, and it shows through your CV that we talked about a lot in this webinar. To actually show your talent and what you can actually offer to the organization will help you get that above people in postgrad, but people with postgrad will have other skills that can take you above everyone else. So again, it's whatever you can offer to that, and the environment that you go into will put you instead. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that question.
Perfect, thanks, Oz. Obviously, this is a current one with the current scenario with what's happening globally. Do we envisage the interviews at the current time would still have a similar format, so interviews, tasks, etc., or might things change and might students need to prepare for something else? So take that Man City one, for example, that's obviously just come out. Are they still going to be likely to be doing task interview, or might things change somewhat?
I think the process will be quite similar to what it was before. I think how you do it and the tools we use now for interviews, I think they don't impact for what organizations want to know. I just want to give a tip for those types of interviews as well. That if you want to be employed by such a club, this is the under 15s, right? As an example. So if you apply to Man City, for example, make very clear when applying why you want that role. So you don't want to apply for the role just so you can have Man City on your resume, right? Because they will see through that immediately. You want to apply for that role because you find the under 15s challenging. It gives you a lot of tasks. You can be the one-man band. You can learn an awful lot of things in an international environment, but because also those players come from different countries as well, and coaching staff. So try to find the focus points here, but definitely make sure you've got a plan. They will notice that.
One thing for me, and one book recommendation is a book called Starting with Why. and then have a look at that and have a read. Start about the why. A lot of people start thinking about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and maybe they'll think about the why. Reverse that and go, why am I doing it? How am I going to get there? And what am I going to do? And then that will put you in a really good, strong mindset across, far than everyone else when you're looking at what you're doing and what you offer. So that would be my advice, especially if you're bored and you want a book to read.
Okay, guys, we'll go for one more, just conscious of time. So someone's asked here, Zach's asked, presumably the higher level of the club, usually more PA is implemented. So what is the lowest level of sport that typically would still use PA, who I might be able to approach for work experience, assuming they couldn't get into a higher level organisation? What kind of level does PA go down to in your experiences, and where might people be able to apply to?
From my experiences, sorry, Lance. From my experiences, I think at any level, I don't think it equates to just the elite environment. I know many amateur teams around here in football who have a PA, have a performance analyst working with them. A few of my friends who play on a Saturday, they have a performance analyst. So yeah, I think at any level, I think this can be applied, and you can be very creative in terms of what you do as well with very limited resources, like Roy mentioned earlier.
Did you want to add on that one, Lance?
Yeah, I would just say, don't think that just because you're working, let's say you're working as an analyst at your local team or a university team, for example, as an intern, don't think that the standards you set yourself whilst working for them should be any different to if you were working for the first team at Manchester City. Your standards are your standards, and you can fall back on them. And if you set really high standards for yourself in your work output, given the tools that you have available to you, so you've got video available to you, you'll have the software to break it down, reporting tools such as Keynote, such as Word, PowerPoint. Use all of those tools that you've got available to you, and just put yourself in the mindset of, if I was working at a university team or a junior team, I would want to do as good a job as if I was working for a top international team. It wouldn't make a difference, because in my own mind, I have to do the best possible job I can for that organization or that team, because ultimately that you're trying to provide a service to them to make them better or to improve their performance. And if you start cutting corners just because it's not Manchester City or it's Manchester United or whoever it may be, then you'll find that it's a really bad trait to get into. So when you do finally get an opportunity to, like Roy says, get your foot in the door and maybe get an interview somewhere, you may find yourself subconsciously cutting the same corners, and eventually people will see that in you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. For those of you who've not had your questions answered live, we'll do our best to come up with a way where we can answer some of those and post some answers out to them afterwards. So please keep an eye on socials, and we'll try and come up with a way where we can get you some answers from the panel to those ones. Unfortunately, we have run out of time right now. So firstly, just to say thank you very much to everyone who's logged on today. We really hope it has given you a bit of an insight and you've taken something away from it with regards to employability. So hopefully you found it useful. Thank you to Hudl for hosting us, to University of Worcester and University of Derby for collaborating on this. We really do hope you found it useful. We're going to be running the second one of these webinars in a couple of weeks. So at the moment we're looking at the 6th of May as our next webinar, where we're going to be looking around communication with coaches, delivery back to coaches, to athletes, and different themes like that. So quite a practical, hands-on approach to that one. So some of the questions you guys have asked today have related to that, so I'm sure those will be answered next time. Thank you very much again, everyone. Hope you found it useful, and stay safe, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.